Hello, my name is Gareth Stead, and I'm very excited to bring to you this next edition of the Every Nation Cape Town's Marketplace Forum, where we host a CV workshop with Gerard Roux. This was an exceptional workshop, and I want to encourage you, if you are a student thinking of getting a job one day, or you're a young professional looking at changing jobs, maybe you're unemployed and battling to find the right job for you, or maybe you're a seasoned career person and you're feeling you're not in the right place, or you're underemployed, or whatever the case may be. There are exceptional tools in this session that I want to encourage you to listen, to learn from, and hopefully this will really equip you to engage the marketplace. It's tough getting a job out there, and with these skills I believe you're going to position yourself better, and I pray that God would open the right doors for you and He'd help you to get that job that He wants you to have.
Yes, so just to introduce, I'm Gareth Stead, and Vaughan Henriques are in the background here managing some things. Urban Smythe and the Marketplace Forum team has very kindly arranged for Gerard Roux to run the CV writing workshop today. So welcome as you join us. And I'm going to ask Urban to open it for us. Thank you, Urban.
Folk, welcome. Gareth, can I pray? Can I just pray?
Please do.
Okay, I'm going to do that, and then I'll introduce Gerard. So, Father, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for this opportunity that you've given us to meet together. We thank you for Gerard and his willingness to do this workshop with us. I pray that you bless him, and just may this workshop flow smoothly, and may it be really beneficial to help people to find employment, which is the underlying purpose of this whole thing. And so be with us now, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Everybody, welcome. As Pastor Gerard said, welcome to this workshop this morning. I would like to introduce Gerard Roux to you. I came to know Gerard by a way of a mutual friend who I met in the DRC. Gerard has been writing CVs and helping job hunters market themselves in a more effective way since 2001. He's appeared frequently on Cape Talk and Radio 702. His advice has been featured in the Cape Argus, the Star newspapers, in the Financial Mail and Business Day. And he has trained MBA students at UCT Graduate School of Business. His job, he says, is to help job hunters get noticed, get interviews, and get job offers. And that's what we're about. So, Gerard, welcome, and please relax, and we are at your service. Go for it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Urban. I just want to ask a question. Have any of you ever had the unusual experience of sending out a CV and not getting a response? You don't have to answer that. It's happened to us all. In fact, it's the most common thing. You send out your CV, you're perfect for the job, and what happens? Dead silence. Nothing happens. No response, no acknowledgement, no recognition, and there you sit, waiting for the phone ring. It can be very demoralizing, disheartening, depressing. It can be infuriating, because, you know, you're great for the job, but you just hear nothing. Now, there could be two possible reasons for this. Number one, let's be honest. It's a frustrating and inefficient, infuriating job market and a job hunting process. The whole process, the hoops we've got to jump through, you know, it can really be infuriating to one. You also have to deal with recruiters who might treat you as if you're nothing. They don't give you a response. They might even lie to you. You're overqualified, or, oh, sorry, the position's been filled internally. These are the things you'll hear all the time. And it leaves you feeling powerless, as if you're just unimportant on the sidelines. And that's not a nice feeling at all. So the one thing that could be going wrong is the job market in general, the process, the recruiters, HR, who, can also sometimes make you feel really unimportant. But you know what? There's nothing we can do about that. It is what it is. It's been that way for years. And, there's no changing it, it seems. Now and then there'll be a single recruiter who will behave well and be polite and will be honest. And that's great. Send them a thank you note. But we certainly can't expect that. That's part of the job search that you've got very little control over. However, the second reason that perhaps you're not getting the response that you would like is because you're not doing things in an optimal way. There are better ways of doing things. There's no way of getting 100% success, but there certainly are ways to say, how can I get better? What can I do better? What can I do that makes a difference? What can I do that other people are not doing? How can I be bolder? How can I be more direct? How can I do something different to get better results? And that's really what this seminar is all about this morning, particularly relating to your CV. It doesn't have to look like a million other CVs. It doesn't have to be ordinary. It doesn't have to make you look like a million other people. There are ways of making it a bit more exciting, a bit more relevant to the needs of the employer that you're trying to reach. You might be great at what you do. You might be perfect for the job, but is your CV communicating that message in a powerful, compelling, unmissable way? Well, let's have a look at some ways that we can make that happen. So this morning, we're going to be looking at a few things. If we take a look at the program for this morning, we'll be looking at the Disrupt CV method. It's a CV method that I've developed over the years, and it's really it's not rocket science, but it's a few important principles that great CVs have in common. And they're really principles that are easy to apply. We're going to have a look at each one after the other. Then we're going to have a look at an actual CV. It's a pretty basic, pretty plain CV, but it contains all of these principles. And we're going to analyze it pretty much line by line. And we're going to be looking at how you can create your own. Then we're going to open up the floor to your questions. You might have situations or questions about your particular CV that you don't know what to do about. Let's discuss those questions. Think about it in the meanwhile. Write it down. Let's see if we can help you during this period. We're going to be taking a break after about 45 minutes or so before we take your questions, and then we'll be closing off with just some general job hunting ideas and tips to try to reassure you that more is possible. We're not helpless. We're not powerless in this thing. There's more possible, and you have more control over the process than you think. We'll discuss a few examples looking at that. So should we get going with what is the disrupt concept? You'll see it in fancy letters. I want you to use this handout that you'll see. I've already been scribbling on mine. It's best if you scribble on yours, because these are key concepts that it's important to understand and to apply. Firstly, let's have a look at the D. D is for disrupt. What is the importance of disrupt? We don't want to do things the same old way. The same old way doesn't work that well. Everybody's doing it. We need to shake things up. We need to prod and poke, do things differently. We need to shake the attention of the people that we're trying to reach. And so we want to do things a little differently, not the traditional way of doing things. Traditionally, a CV starts with personal details. Hey, maybe not even that. First, a cover page with two people shaking hands, as if that's going to grab anybody's attention. Maybe back in the 80s, that was a cool, new, innovative thing to do. Not anymore. We need to be more compelling than that. We need to disrupt a little. Then there's the I and the S of disrupt. And really they go together. Now, if you're in sales, perhaps you'll recognize it. It's a well-known, well-established sales concept. I is for irritate. S is for solution. Yes, irritate the problem. Poke it. Make the person feel the problem. And then provide a solution. So in a job hunting setting, you want to understand the problems that an employer is experiencing in a department, in a job function, in a particular kind of industry. And you want to make them aware of it. And then you want to offer yourself as a solution. That's sales. And writing a CV, conducting a job hunt, is all about selling you and your skills, expertise, and character and attributes to an employer, showing that you can be a solution to their problem. Then we take a look at the letter R. It's boring. It stands for regular. Because a CV needs to contain some boring and regular details like where you went to school or college, where you've worked, what your name is, and so forth. So there needs to be some regular structure to the CV, work experience, education, and so on. Then we've got the U with a little 2. I'm not a mathematician, so it doesn't stand for squared. It's just a fancy way of saying there are 2 U's. The 1 stands for unusual. We need to do a few unusual things to, again, differentiate ourselves above and separate from the competition. The second U is for unambiguous. Unambiguous means there's no doubt about what we're saying. No one is in any confused state of mind about what we do and how we do it. We come out and we say it, direct, straight, so that our message is unmistakable. Too many people never do that in their CV. They just have personal details, where they went to school. They never actually come out and say, Mr. Employer, this is what I got for you. This is how I do it. This is why you can trust I'm going to do a great job. We'll be looking at some ways on how to implement that in a CV. Then the P, kind of a repetition for problem, but it's so important because an employer, when they advertise for a position, all they're doing is looking to solve a problem. They've got a gap in their business. They've got a problem they need to solve. They need something that needs to happen. They need something that has to be fixed. And you want to offer yourself as the solution to those problems. So identifying where problems may be, offering yourself as that solution is critical to your whole job hunt, but especially to your CV. Then the last letter is for trust. Your CV needs to not just convey information and say that you're fantastic. It must have a ring of truth about it. The employer must trust that you are the guy or the girl for the job. They must have a feeling of this person knows what they're talking about. And you must present your credentials in a way that really encourages the employer to trust you. Let's go over those letters again, those key principles. D is for disrupt. Do something different. I is for irritate. It partners with S, which is solution. Irritate the problem, highlight it, and then offer a solution. R is for the regular details. U2, unusual, do things differently. And the other U is unambiguous. Be straight. Make your message clear. P is for problem. Always explain the problems that you can solve. And T is for trust. So we're going to be looking now at an actual CV and how a disrupt CV embodies these principles. It'll also help you to see how you can apply these principles in your own CV. Just a few things before we start, guys. If you look at the sample CV that I sent you, not the template, but the sample for analysis, you'll notice that on the right-hand side, there's a grid which identifies each and every line, more or less. It's not perfect, but it's just to help you for that to be as a reference. When I refer to something in the CV, I'll give you more or less the number at which, you know, the line that I'm talking about, and then you can have that as an easy reference in case you were wondering what that grid is for on the right-hand side. But it's going to be very useful in identifying exactly where am I, what am I talking about in the CV itself. So let's take each of these principles and have a look at where it's applied within the CV. And we're going to just go in more or less random fashion. We're going to start with the regular details. Now, if you look at the CV for analysis, this is my copy. This is what you need to be looking for. I've scribbled all over it already. Yours will be a little different in that it's got that grid on the side like this. Has everyone got it? Here's the grid with numbers on the right-hand side. Scribble all over it, please. We're going to be noting some important points as we go through it. So first of all, regular details. So this is the kind of stuff that just needs to be in your CV. You know, it's important. You need to include your name, your contact details, sometimes your address. You know, it's good for the employer to know that you at least live in the area. It just gives them a sense of safety. I remember when I was a recruiter and people didn't put at least where they lived in, their address, there was somehow always some doubt. You know, maybe they're in Johannesburg. Maybe there's going to be a long process. Maybe we'll have to fly them down to Cape Town. Oh, you know, it's a pain. So putting in where you live is quite important. So, you know, just, it doesn't need to be necessarily your address. You know, sometimes you want to keep that a bit of a secret actually, but perhaps just the suburb where you live would be adequate. So regular details. If we go through the CV, we see your name, contact details at the top. There's a section, work experience, earlier work experience, which is a bit summarized. So, you know, this stuff is not difficult to understand. And toward the end, there's your personal details, your education. You know, none of this is complicated. All of it is necessary. Sometimes people put in things like health equals excellent. You know, guys, it's unnecessary to include details like that, especially on the front page. I've never seen anyone who said health poor. Everyone is excellent. You know, no one really takes it seriously. It's not one of those things that you've really got to worry about. Okay. So that's really what we need to mention for the regular details. Not complicated. One of the things, though, that I always include in the CV under this regular section is, however, at the beginning, if you look, for example, on line number, it's around about 32, you'll see that John Bykes has been most recently a senior service administrator. Then he gives the name of the company. Then he gives a short description of the company. And then on line 31 or so, he gives a quick summary of, you know, what the company is about, what his role has been about, and it just provides a bit of context. It's quite an important thing to do because you want to give the person reading your CV a broad understanding of what you did. Sometimes we rely on the individual duties and responsibilities to do that. Well, it can do that, but usually That doesn't cover the size of our team, for example, or the scope of our responsibilities. And especially you'll see in that job summary section, it's 3 lines long, and it doesn't just say, well, I did A, B, and C. It explains the benefits that you delivered, how you improved customer service ratings, overcame a backlog. These are the things that employers are looking for. They want someone who took action and produced results. So regular details are important, but study the CV and you'll see that those regular details are sexed up a little bit, made a bit more exciting. Okay. Let's move on to a second principle, and an important one, and that is the word unambiguous. It's the principle unambiguous, which means we've got to be clear about what we do. So a good way to think about this is think about yourself in the position of the employer. You know, there are a million things. The phone is ringing. He's got labor problems on the shop floor. You know, he's got a wife at home that's irritating him. He's got bank and SA revenue services on his case. He's got a million things to worry about. And now there's you to worry about. Okay, you don't want to be one of those things. You just want to get to the heart of his problem. Yes, he's advertised for a position. Present yourself as that thing. Say, you know what? You're looking for an admin manager. I'm an admin manager. So that's why at the top, we've included a section under John Bikes, which is a summary of who you are and what you do. And it shows the employer immediately, hey, this is where I fit in. This is how I can benefit you. Makes it clear. Even if he doesn't read anything but that opening summary, he's got a clear idea of where you fit in, that you can be useful, that you've produced great results before. So immediately, you know, you're on the front foot. You're marketing yourself. You're putting yourself unambiguously in his path, giving him a solution that he's looking for. One way I sometimes explain this to people is we need to make your case. Just as if you were in a courtroom, you've been accused of something that you're not guilty of. You've got to make your case. You've got to lay down the facts and your witnesses to show that you are innocent. It's like that for a job too. You've got to make your case. Why should they hire you? What are the reasons? And it's good to start the CV unambiguously, saying, I fit into this role of admin manager or customer service manager. Here's what I do. I take chaos and I create order. I create efficiency. I take a dysfunctional team and I organize them so that we get the job done. I take a backlog, eliminate it. Within 3 months, it's gone. Wow, how refreshing to an employer to see someone who can get real results, who's promising to produce the thing that he needs. Also in that opening section, we've included a quick summary of your experience, because any kind of a claim that you make, I'm great, needs to be substantiated with facts. I've got so much experience. I've got this diploma. These are the results I get. This is who endorses me. So we've included even a little endorsement there from Susan Marshall, who just comes out and says, John is as solid as a rock. What effect does that have on the employer when he reads it? Gives them confidence. Gives them confidence. Because here you are coming and unambiguously stating where you fit in, what you can do, and that message is backed up by independent people that you've worked with before. What a great way to start your CV. Remember though that that opening section needs to be compact and brief. Please keep it unambiguous. The moment we start adding too much detail, it starts becoming muddy. Be careful what you put there. Good, so unambiguous. We can also go through the CV with that same principle, guys. I almost feel like asking you, where else do you see unambiguous? But for the sake of time, we're not going to raise our hands in this case. I'm going to point them out to you. So unambiguous, where can we see it? Well, have a look down at line number 48 or so. And there's a heading, Problems I Solved and Endorsements. Unambiguous, right? We've highlighted in bold the benefit that you've provided. We've made it clear. We've stated it clearly, directly. We haven't shied away from it. We've come across and said, these are the things that I do. Again, unambiguous, not scared to say what benefit we provide in that environment. And you'll notice that it's not done in a boastful way either. It's done in a very factual way, which is a good thing. Other parts is no ambiguity. You'll see that all through the quotes that we've used from this, those references, all contain unambiguous statements. So we really want to, from that, guys, we want to be direct. We don't want to waffle on. We need to come out and say what we do and how we do it, and that we do it well. And that way we'll be applying that principle of unambiguous. The third one that we're going to look at is the P. Do you remember what it's for? Problems I solve. Okay, problems that the business or the industry or the department or the manager might have that we can provide a solution to. And really, I think we've done this in probably two main places in the CV. Firstly, in the opening section, you'll notice that on line more or less number 9, we've started a sentence there, which is a quick, brief summary of what we do. Do you notice that we immediately dive into what are the problems that I solve within a business? And we talk there about backlogs. We talk there about customer service that might be less than desirable. We talk about, complicated people, systems, processes. We're immediately showing that these are the problems you tackle. And then underneath that, we go and highlight it in bold so that it's unambiguous again. The problems that we solve. We create order from chaos. We're fast and efficient. We reduce backlogs and we improve the overall productivity of a team. So again, these are all problems that weigh on the mind of a manager or a business owner. And here you are, like a fresh spring breeze, providing exactly what they need. What a great way of presenting yourself to them. Very different to the ordinary CV that never actually comes out and says any of this stuff. That's the kind of CV that you see piled on recruiters' desks or filling the email of a recruiter that they will never look at. They open it and it's just the same old stuff. Here's something fresh. Here's a fresh approach that hopefully will raise you or help you be raised to the top. So we've dealt with the regular details. We've dealt with being unambiguous. We've dealt with problems that you solve. Just an interesting thing regarding what you'll see on line 47. Usually people include a heading there called achievements. You know how a recruiter thinks about the word achievements. He thinks to himself, achievements. This is where the person is going to talk, a lot of nonsense about how fantastic they are and what they achieved. It's boring. It's the way it was done in the past. Let's try to be a bit more intriguing. Intriguing. What can we do to intrigue the mind of the business owner? What are they looking for? Someone to solve their problem. Here's a guy saying, these are the problems I solve. It's much more intriguing. It's much more engaging. And then when he reads that you solve the very problems that he got, that's very compelling. That's very compelling. You know, maybe he's sitting at work on a Saturday morning and there's paperwork all around him. And his admin manager was supposed to sort it out, but that department is chaos and he's got people on his back. And here you present yourself as the guy who will kind of problems. It's very refreshing to an employer to rather read there, instead of all about you and what you feel you've achieved, it reads out the business problems that you solve and you can help him. It's a much better and more intriguing approach. It draws them in. Did you notice also that we've told a story there? And so here's a technique for figuring out what to include in that problems I solve section. And it's well known, PAR. It stands for problem faced, action taken, result achieved. That's what you want to put in your achievement section. What are the problems that you have faced? How did you tackle them? What action plan did you come up with and implement? And then what were the results? That's the little story you want to tell. It's very compelling. People listen to it. People enjoy reading those things. Success stories work in convincing and persuading people to take you seriously, that you are the man or the woman for the job. Sometimes my clients get stuck with these sort of things. Sometimes you may feel, well, what did I achieve? I just did my job. You know, don't think like that. Try to think of the situation when you started in the job. Was it a mess? Was it inefficient? Were there things that needed to be done? Were there things that had been neglected? How did you improve things over a period of time? It doesn't have to be earth-shattering, but don't underestimate the value that you provided in the beginning by giving the function some direction, putting some discipline in place, putting a plan in place, improving things, following instructions perhaps. These are all contributions that you made to the success of the department. You might also think about different events that happened. You know, for example, Urban mentioned at the beginning, a guy who he met in the DRC. I remember writing his CV, and one of the situations that he faced was civil war in Liberia. So you're setting up a mine and you're getting all supplies in from all over the world. Suddenly a civil war breaks out. You've got a problem. And I remember he sat with 1,000 containers in about 10 different ports around the world. And suddenly this project had ground to a standstill because of civil war. That's a great story. How did you sort it out? Well, you know, think of different events that happened in your work. COVID-19. What hoops did you have to jump through in order to still get the job done, despite the event, the negative event or incident that happened? And there could be one of many different other things that you could think of. We want to move on, guys, to number 4, which is unusual. So the unusual principle is we don't just want to do things in the same old way. And so, I mean, the most obvious thing with this CV is that it's 2 pages. The guy's had a lot of work experience, but his CV, concise, 2 pages. That's unusual. And it's refreshing. So many employers have said to me, via my clients, wow, 2 pages, fantastic. And it might be a CEO of a company, a financial director, a CFO, a CEO, 2 pages. Doesn't have to be, but keep it concise. It's very unusual for someone to be able to express themselves in such a short space of time. It shows clarity of thought. It shows confidence. It shows that you're with it and up to date, that you have a modern way of thinking. Those are appealing qualities. Be unusual. Something else that's unusual besides the 2 pages feature is, again, to offer yourself as a solution. Very few people ever do this. They just expect the employer to read through their personal details, to read through their long list of 30 bullet points, duties and responsibilities, and hope that that person is going to get excited about them. That's just not going to happen. And so the opening section is unusual. And it's unusual to have so many compelling points in one place. And it's refreshing and enjoyable to a recruiter or to an employer. Also, the problems I solved section, unusual, intriguing, it gets attention. Let's move on from unusual again to the irritate and solution section, or principle. You'll notice that there's a lot of repetition in what I'm saying, but that's entirely on purpose, because these concepts, we need to grasp them, we need to understand them, and we need to apply them in the way we write our CV. The words we use, how we do it, what we put where. So irritate and solution. Remember, it's a sales concept where you irritate the problem. In other words, you have your sales prospect, or in this case, your employer. You want to remind them of the paperwork that's looming behind them. You want to remind them that SARS is on their case. You want to remind them the chaos that's on their shop floor. You want to remind them a little bit about those things. And then you want to provide yourself as a solution. Okay, so places we've done this are, again, in the opening summary, creating order from chaos, fast, efficient service, reducing backlogs. Okay, so in those words, you're irritating the problem. The word backlog is gonna, it's gonna remind the admin manager that you want to work for that he's got a big problem. And it's keeping him awake at night. The backlog, all of the processes and systems that have become over the years so chaotic and convoluted, you solve those problems. You're going to be the one to rescue him from his issue. So we want to use the sales concept and show how you can be a solution to it. The last one that we've got and want to discuss here is trust. The CV is all about trust. We need to be able to convince the employer that you can do what you say you can. So what are the things that you see on this document that helps you to trust that John Bykes would be a good choice for this job? Well, firstly, what stands out to me is that the CV is well organized. You know, it's not all over the place. It's not, out of alignment. It's been produced by someone who kind of knows how to write a document. And so things are in alignment and it looks well organized. Doesn't have to be fancy. This is not a fancy CV. I write some very fancy CVs. But this is something everyone can use. And it contains all of these elements. So it is a question of just doing the basics right. And so sometimes it's spelling that we just, we don't pay much attention to. And although there are lots of people who say, oh, if you make one spelling mistake, we're going to throw your CV out. I think that's a lot of rubbish. If they do that, well, then maybe you don't want to work for a company like that. Because if the person is really good for your company, if they make a strong case for hiring them, I'm not going to chuck them out. I want them on the team. One little spelling mistake is not going to disqualify them from being a great admin manager, for example. It just means they made one little spelling mistake. It's not a big deal because they've done great work. So, but doing the basics right is important. If we can avoid making stupid mistakes, let's do that. If we can get someone who's a professional at creating documents, maybe just a secretary or a personal assistant. They write letters all the time. They know how to use Word. Get them to review your CV. Get it all in alignment. Make it all nice and neat. Hey, join my Facebook group and put your sample up there and I'll provide some input for you. I've provided my details on the one form. And maybe if there are others there, we can all sort of join and discuss, you know, what you need to do to make an improvement. Okay. So trust is important. And part of trust is, of course, explaining in some detail how you made a difference in your previous jobs, but not just in a general way. Being specific, using statistics, figures, because when you start using figures, people generally, firstly, get interested, and secondly, they trust that you kind of know what you were talking about. Take a look at, for example, John Bikes here, down where he talks about the problems that he solved around about line number 53, 54, raising service ratings from 60%, from less than 60% to 98%. The fact that he measured his job tells you something, that he's a high quality guy. That he improved it shows that he is a high quality guy. It shows that he's organized, that he's interested in measurable results. He explains what he did in order to achieve this. And then at the end, he explains the kind of results that he got from his plan. When you do things that way, it's just more believable. It engenders in the reader a sense of trust that you know what you're talking about. Should you be able to prove all those figures? You know, sometimes it's not necessary, but they must be true. Sometimes maybe it was 97.3 actually. It's not a big deal. We don't have to have all these things in writing, signed by the police, verified, you know, not necessary, but they must be true because you've got to sit there and defend them. When they ask you, you've got to come up with the same story. And of course, if you have the documentation to prove these sort of things, well, that's better, obviously, but not necessary to have everything signed in triplicate and stamped by the Commissioner of Oaths. All right, but must be generally true. And if they are, wow, it engenders a sense of trust. Something else, did you notice all the quotations that we used? They engender a sense of trust too. Why? The people are credible. It's not although I've seen it, people quoting their parents. Johnny is a very good boy. It's happened. We don't want to do that. It doesn't, have high credibility. It doesn't give a sense of trust. But when the person was a sales manager, or when your reference is a CEO and contains a nice title, well, that engenders a sense of trust. In this case, John Bikes has led the way with a quote by Susan Marshall, who was the financial director. Now, financial directors can be dodgy, but generally speaking, if you're recommended and one of your referees is a financial director, well, that gives a sense of trust that you know what you're talking about. And when there's one quotation, it's okay. When there are two, that's better. When there are three, even better. So guys, always collect the good things people say about you. Get it in writing. Put it in a special portfolio. Keep it. You can include excerpts of these in your CV like this. It gives a sense of trust. And that's really what a CV is all about. One of the other things where trust comes in is under the education and training section. That's on page 2. People put a lot of store in having some sort of firm education, whether it's a degree, diploma, certificates, even short courses. And sometimes we don't have these things. In this case, John Bikes has got a few things that are good and respectable and shows there's a base of training, of professional training that's good. What if you don't have them? Well, that's something we can discuss, but you should never put nothing there. Get the library book out, read it, put the book, perhaps, bookkeeping for people who know nothing about bookkeeping. Take that book out of the library, read it, put it on your CV, if that's an important thing that you should know about. Take a free online course, take a paid online course. These are things that, you know what, they're not necessarily going to get you to financial director status, but they show that you're someone who's interested in learning. And when someone shows that they're interested in learning, they get taken a bit more seriously. So make it a practice of constantly updating yourself. Read books. Read certain websites, perhaps, that provide information on what you do. New ways of administrating. New ways of organizing the work. New ways of selling. New ways of being a motor mechanic. You want to be reading all the time, taking an interest, because when you on your CV include these sort of things, it makes people trust you more. It makes them think of you as someone who enjoys learning and therefore is able to learn in the new company. And therefore they'll be more valuable. They've got a good attitude about them. If the only thing you've got is 15 years ago, when you did, a 3-month course, certificate course, and you haven't done anything since then, it doesn't make the employer think well of you. So take a book out the library. It can be as simple as that. Take a few books. Take 2 books a month. Include blogs that you read on a regular basis to do with your profession. Do that. It's valuable. Right, so that's what we've now come to the point, guys, where I think we need to take a break. And we've been through all of the principles. We understand the disrupt principles. We've had a look at how they apply in a CV and how they work together to get you better results, to make the employer understand you, trust you, and see you at work through the examples that you provide of how you go about things. Let's talk next about your questions, your CV, and how we can apply these principles in your CV. You'll be leading this discussion. We want to see some hands. You'll see on the right-hand side, if you open up your Zoom panel, and it'll open up a right-hand side when you click on participants. And on the right-hand side, you'll see raise your hand. Raise your hand, and you can ask your question, and I'll do the best I can to answer. I just want to start by highlighting Jungle Oats. What has Jungle Oats got to do with this? Well, have a look at the label. You see that? That's what we're writing. We're writing the cover of a product. Your CV is your label. And what does it start with? When they pack the shelves, guys, do they pack it this way around? With all that complicated scientific detail on the front? Never. If a shelf packer did that, well, he wouldn't be a very good shelf packer. Rather, immediately it says what it is. Oats. One single word, making it clear where this product fits in and what it is. We have to come out and be clear about what we do. If we're applying for a motor mechanic job, we have to say, I'm a motor mechanic. We need to make it big and obvious and unmissable. And then we need to follow up with a few things. We need to show the features of what do we have to contribute. In this case, 100% whole grain pure oats, qualified motor mechanic, registered with the SA Mechanic Association, builds trust, makes it clear you're a professional. Later on, toward the middle of the CV, we can get into some of the detail. But when it comes to the opening, we need to open with a bang. We need to be clear and unambiguous about what we are and how we can provide benefit. That's what the heart is all about. Heart healthy, healthy food. Another, heart association. Okay, so basic information, but important for the person who's going to buy it, to see it, to recognize what it is. That's what I need, and be convinced that this is a good quality product. Our CV, it's kind of the same thing. Make it clear, simple, unambiguous about presenting who we are and what we can do. Right, so let's take a few questions. Justin, you have your hand up. Let me just, before you start speaking, let me just unmute you. Although I'm not sure if I can do that. Maybe one of the other admins can. I'm clicking on unmute, but there's no action. Just make sure that you have unmuted yourself. There we go. Let's have your question,
yes,
Justin.
Good day. Thanks for an awesome session. Really appreciate it. I think it's very insightful and great. My question is, with regards to covering letters and photos, how valuable is covering letters still, and is it relevant, or is it still appealing basically to have a photo, and should it be professional? And I think, yeah, that's the one big question, and then I have a different question as well. If I'm allowed.
Let's deal with the first two.
Yes.
Let's deal with the first two. We can take your third. So cover letter first. So let's deal with that. You'll face a situation where sometimes the job advertisement states what it wants from you. But in general terms, you're going to need to email your CV. And I would say to you, don't ever include your cover letter unless you've been specifically asked to do that as a separate attachment. Because recruiters, generally speaking, view the CV as the main event. They're not that interested in a cover letter where you go on and on and on about how hardworking you are and how you'll be great. So I would say just focus, take the essence of what you've put in that opening summary. That should be the essence of a cover letter. The other thing that has an impact on a cover letter is what does the job ad ask for? 5 years experience with this software, experience with that methodology. Make sure that you include those things, but make it a brief and concise email. So include all of that in a short email where you specify how you match the qualifications, and then leave it to the CV to do the rest. Okay. Unless you asked to write a long story, in which case you sure. Just follow those instructions. Okay.
Good. I hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Next is about the photo. Now, I have to say that mostly I include photos in CVs that I write, but it can be technically a bit challenging to do that. When I receive CVs from my clients and they've included a picture, it's not often done very well. And so it can make you look a little bit sketchy. It can be the picture. I mean, I did a CV for a CEO on Thursday, and I mean, he earns a lot of money. It's a big, well-known company, and his picture was about this big. You could hardly see him, and he wasn't even looking at the camera. He was looking off into the distance, you know, as if he's a big thinker. It didn't look good. So, you know, that's why I didn't include a picture in this example. I want to make it simple for people. So it's not essential. I just wanted to say that a well-taken picture where you look professional and well-organized and well-groomed and you look trustworthy, and when you don't look full of yourself, when you look like a nice person to have around, well, it can be a good thing. It can add some interest. It can add some color to a CV. So you can do it, but just be aware that it's not the priority. Don't put all the focus on it.
Good, I hear you.
Because you can do things wrong, and it can go wrong for you, you know? Okay.
Okay.
You had a third question. Let's just take it quick.
Okay. This one is a bit more different. It is just when you are outside of the market. So when you have a CV and you need to present the CV, but your current employment remuneration is already outside of the market, and it makes it difficult to enter into the market. Is there any strategy that one could be using to actually increase the attention of who you are in the market?
Okay. So it's a tough situation to be in, and it's unfortunate, and it's a hard one to deal with. But the bottom line is you've got to make it clear that you're worth it. You've got to make it clear that you're worth it. So you can do that in a few ways. Show how you can bring money in, or show how you can save money. But, you know, I would encourage you in those situations, do your homework. Do your homework. Study that company inside and out. Identify what their products are, what their philosophy is, who the people are, what their backgrounds are, where the opportunities in the industry might exist, what opportunities they might be missing, what they could be doing wrong in their factory. Talk to people perhaps who've left the company. Find out what's going on inside it. Really make your case. And then figure out in all of that intel that you're researching, figure out how you can help them move forward. When you make your case as strongly as that, and as specifically as that, sometimes you can even say, I envisage.
Okay.
Yeah, Gerard, I think we've got a buffering challenge. Let's just give that a minute to resolve. But Justin, yeah, I think he was catching the essence of your question there.
I was. It was good.
Why don't we go to the next question? Shane and Esther, let's hear your question while we wait for Gerard to come back.
Yeah, so our question, hello there, Gerard and Gareth and everyone. So the question is around the layout of your CV. If you were to have a design, for example, you have a design platform where you can design your CV so that it's not just words in black and white, but you can incorporate, you still keep it to the essentials of what Gerard explained, 2-pager, and you keep it to that standard and that formula, the disrupt formula, but you you were to apply it to a design template so that you bring in a nice layout that's professional and perhaps a corporate color, and then also bring in a photograph of yourself. So I just wanted to hear from Gerard what he thinks about that. And then also, secondly, if you were to say have 30 years experience, then obviously you'll take out from your 30 years experience those aspects that apply to the job that you are applying for now, right? So that's what you will highlight. But if you would like to demonstrate skill across other positions that were held across the 30 years, would it then be in order to do, let's say, as part of this creative CV, a timeline so that it's just one graphic representation of other years where you've worked across other roles, and you then demonstrate their other functions and skills that you've acquired over the years. And then the third thing is to perhaps include, would it be in order? Because if we have a LinkedIn account, for example, your LinkedIn account is exceptionally detailed, or it could be exceptionally detailed. Could you also, as part of your introduction, where you make your first impression here at the start of your CV, say for more information, click here and then include your LinkedIn URL? And that's it from our side.
Okay, so Esther, thank you for that. I think Gerard's going to have to try and log in again. I think we may have lost him. That's a bit unfortunate, but we're going to keep the momentum going as you just wait up on him, and we'll pose these questions back to him. I wonder, because you've got 3 questions there that kind of link to each other. But I mean, Urban, do you want to switch your video on and come in here? Let's also tap into your experience. Urban, I think you and others in this forum, myself as well, you know, we've often been in that position as employers where whether we use a recruiter or not, we're getting, sometimes it's through the HR department, they've prepared a shortlist. So we don't even get to see all the applicants, but we get to see the shortlist. But then they come with the shortlist and their CVs. And I could certainly answer some of Esther's question from that point of view is when the layout is good, it definitely catches your eye. And as Gerard has been saying so well, maybe even subconsciously as an employer, it's engendering that trust because you can see it's neatly done. Like even the example with John Bikes he's got here, just the headings are so clear. You know, this isn't a flashy CV at all. So Esther, your first question about layout and bringing some design elements, I would say those are good ideas. If it is an expression of who you are and what you're offering. I would also say don't overdo it. I mean, if it's a graphic design position you're applying for, then maybe you want to really go for it. But if it is an admin manager position, you might not want to overdo that design. It's more, just I think the messaging coming through how you're designing it is selling, presenting yourself well, as he's been saying. Urban, what are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are that less is more. I get lots of CVs. We're still getting, especially in the market that we're in at the moment, there's lots of people that have been laid off their jobs, lots of people looking for jobs. And one of the things that, Gerard, I'd like him to answer this when he gets back to us, is one of the things that I find very useful is when you make reference or use somebody's name as a reference, try always to leave some kind of way to contact that person so that it builds even more trust, because then the employer knows that I can call that person and ratify what this person has put in their CV. But I'll tell you, as an employer and as somebody who's been in a position where I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of CVs, less is more.
Thank you, Urban. Gerard is just going to be logging back in shortly, and let's have his additional comment on this. Let's hear the next question from Esther was on the timeline. You've got 30 years experience. How do you, what do you do with that? I mean, my understanding from that is like even John Bikes, how many years experience does he has? He's got 12 years in admin customer service, but before that, does he have other, he goes way back to a diploma in 2000. So he's got 20 years experience, but can you see he's putting the emphasis on the recent stuff and the relevant stuff. The more distant stuff is very quick summaries. I mean, earlier positions, he's used only 3 lines of his CV for, 10 years of his life. That's well summarized. I mean, Urban, what are your thoughts on that?
Agreed, 100%. That's how you want to do it. You're applying for a position, focus on the position you're applying for. and the skills that you have relevant to that position. If they want to ask you more, then they can do that in an interview or in an email, or let them ask you for your additional information. Offer them the information relevant to the position and how you're going to solve their problems in that position.
Okay, these are great answers. The good news is we have got Gerard back in the room. Welcome back, Gerard. Okay, I think while we're waiting for him to switch on his video, the third question was on the LinkedIn profile. Yes, there's a lot of detail there. I would definitely recommend, that reference. I think certainly your recruiter is going to be looking at that probably, but I've not been an HR recruiter. Gerard's comment on that would be helpful. Gerard, are you back with us?
I'm back on mobile.
Okay.
Seems like my regular internet connection went down. So sorry about the phone.
Thanks for persevering. We've just had questions from Esther. Urban and I kind of gave our answers to it, but I think and the audience is more keen to hear what you think. We've often been in that position of employer, so it's very relatable here, and your answers are exceptional.
Yeah, of course.
So the question would basically, number one, is how important is layout? Should you look at some design elements and the likes? And then the other question was on if you've got 30 years experience, how do you create? You should create a nice timeline of that. Maybe you want to just comment on that. And then the third question was on a LinkedIn profile. How do you use that? Is it recommended?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to the format, it depends how technically inclined and skilled you are, because one can make a real mess up, and you might have a good message and you might have good experience, but because you're trying to force yourself into some fancy template, it just never looks good, and often people think they can just download a template from the internet. And I mean, there are some amazing templates on the internet, of course, with incredible design features in them, and they look very striking. But try to enter your information in those templates, and I don't know, it just never quite does the job. It starts looking awkward very quickly, and you kind of feel that you're trying to hammer a round peg into a square hole. So be careful of too many design elements to it. It can be striking, but it's got a downside, because to manage to do that can be quite complicated. So it depends on your skills. It also needs a bit of a graphic design, artistic eye. And at the end of the day, also, there are things like applicant tracking systems that do not treat those kind of templates with any kindness at all, because they're very complicated to scan. So one finds that that becomes a complicated situation. So be careful of too much design. A simple approach is sometimes the better one to take. When I write a CV, I follow these principles, but the CVs I write generally are much more visually interesting than this. But I didn't want to present that in this workshop, because most people just don't have the Microsoft Word skills to be able to put that kind of thing together and make it work. So just be careful. But that's the advantage. Join my Facebook group, submit a sample that you've worked on, and I'll offer comments,
It's the timeline question is 30 years experience. What do you do with that?
Yeah, so the 30 years experience, it depends on a number of things, but often, I've seen people use the timeline type thing, and it can be valuable, because it shows a progression. It shows that you started off in one place and that you advanced and progressed and were promoted perhaps to more senior positions. But usually when you've got a 2-page CV, it's pretty concise on its own. So you don't need that, it's one page after the next. and it's quick and easy to assimilate where you've been and what you've done and that you've advanced and progressed. So the timeline in itself is sometimes just a duplication. It doesn't really add that much to the CV. So I generally don't use that kind of approach because the CVs that are out are very concise in any case. And then LinkedIn, yeah, you've got to have a LinkedIn profile. You know, people are going to search for you online and they're going to find a mishmash of different results. With LinkedIn, you know, they'll find your LinkedIn page. And if it's up to date and it's professional, that's what you want. You must tell the same story as your CV, generally speaking. And you want to be able to control your presence online. You don't want to leave it to chance. So having a LinkedIn profile, very important.
This is great. Gerard, I don't know if you can see the hands up, or do you want me just to prompt you?
If you can just control that part of it, because my phone,
okay.
I can't see
the next
everything.
question is from Mpumi. Please go ahead.
Hi everybody. Hi Gerard. Thanks. This is a lovely session.
Hi, Mpumi.
I've got, I think, 3 questions. First one is more administrative. So are you happy or comfortable that we share the notes with maybe people that we come into contact with, and then, or people that need advice or help with putting together?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Is that something you'd be?
Go ahead. No problem.
Thank you. And then the second one I've got is, how do you tastefully include in your CV other aspects of your profile? So let's say you are helping out with an NGO, or you are sitting on a board as a non-executive director. How do you bring that to the light of your prospective employer in a tasteful manner, right?
Yeah,
and then
so
the last,
okay.
Yeah, sorry. Do you wanna have a bash and then I say then?
Okay, let me just answer that because it's very simple. Just add a section, you know, like we've added a section for the older positions in the sample document, which is more of a summary of where the guy's been. You know, focuses on recent experience, and then your earlier work, you know, not of that much importance. It's important, needs to be there, but you can summarize it quite easily. And then you might have a totally separate section that explains your, you know, it could be community work that you're doing, could be volunteer work that you're doing, or it could be other professional work. It might even be a business that you have founded, that you're involved in, or a non-executive director position. It's a very common thing for people to be involved in other things. However, you don't want necessarily the focus to be there. You know, you don't want the focused attention on that, but it certainly does add something to your stature and how people will view you. It helps your positioning when it's a significant role. You know, it mustn't be something old and outdated, but something preferably current. And also something you got to be careful when dealing with entrepreneurial positions, because you don't want you know, your employer, the future employer, to think this person is on another mission, you know, and they're going to come here and they're going to be distracted because they're involved in a million other things. So you got to be careful. You got to select the things you include quite carefully, so that they help you and not distract from your core value to that future employer. View it from their point of view. You know, if you were them, how would you view it? So keep that principle in mind.
Got it. Thank you. And then the last question I've got, I think, is opposite to what Esther asked, is what do you do with no experience? So I think the focus till now has been around when you've got a lot of experience, how to make it concise and how to bring the most relevant parts of your skills, right? Yeah, cool, thanks.
Okay. A common situation, you know, very common for graduates or sometimes not so recent graduates who haven't done very much, you know. And it's very similar to the answer I gave, or to the advice I gave regarding quality, you know, take a course. So when it comes to experience, sometimes I tell students, paint your parents' house. Paint it. Take it on as a project. In fact, take a book out of the library on project management and paint the house following project management principles. I'm serious. Because that's the kind of experience that, although not deeply impressive as a, for a professional, for a graduate entering the market, or for a young person to take that kind of initiative and to show that kind of good attitude and to plan it properly and to, execute it so that there's a picture of the house all beautifully painted and she's standing there in front of it. Evidence that she can tackle a job, plan it well, execute it, and be proud of her work. That's powerful. And that's evidence that you're dealing with a high caliber person. Now, as an employer, who are you going to choose? The person who sat on their backside gaming all day and just doing nothing for 2 years? Or the person who painted their parents' house and made it like a job, That's what you're going to choose. So use experience at home, but it can't just be lazy stuff, It's got to be plan it, execute it, volunteer somewhere, and document your work.
Great.
So these are the sort of things that can be very powerful in a CV. And, set up something in your own community, identify a problem, perhaps the verges of everyone's house, no one's cutting their lawn, and do it. Say, I started a business. I cut everybody's lawns on Saturday afternoons to make the neighborhood neat. That shows initiative, enterprise, willingness to work, all of the qualities that employers love. That in a CV is very powerful.
Amazing. Thank you for that.
Great.
And
great
read
questions,
books
great answers.
and list those books. Read books and list those books in a CV. If you've got no experience, show that you're someone who is a hunger for learning. That's also powerful.
Thank you, guys. Next one is from Machele.
Hi, Machele.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Yes, good morning. My question is mostly when I'm writing my CV. You talked in the beginning that usually we include our addresses of where we are. Let's say, for example, if I want to relocate to Joburg, but now I'm based in Cape Town, how do I make my CV more like to stand up to make sure that even if I am in Cape Town looking for this Joburg job, I can be one of the interviewees?
Okay. Good question, Marcella. Thank you. And it's always complicated, when you're wanting to change city like that. Employers, they want someone here tomorrow, for an interview, and they want you to be easily accessible and so on. So it's always going to be an issue. But I think the best way to handle it is just come out and say it. Come out and say, I'm currently in Cape Town, but I need to be in Johannesburg for my family, and I'm going to be there. I'm planning a trip between, July 1st and July 15th. I'm going to be there. I'm setting up interviews with companies such as yours, and it's my intention to relocate soon after that. So show that you've got a plan. Show that your intent. Just be upfront about it. Perhaps end off your CV, or perhaps even state it in the summary at the beginning, because your telephone number is going to be Cape Town. Perhaps in the cover letter, that's another place that you can mention it. But I would say just be upfront about it and show intent. Don't say, I'm thinking about moving to Joburg. No, I'm moving to Joburg. These are the dates I'm going to be there. I'm available for interviews. And I'm relocating soon after that. Show that you don't have a dream. You've got a plan. It's definite. But don't be scared of coming out and just saying this, saying your situation. Tell it like it is.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, most of nowadays when you want to apply for a position, they usually send you like 2 links where you have to fill up all those other stuff online in order for you to apply for a job. Or you just, let's say, for example, in Pnet, you fill your name and everything and set up a profile, and when there is a job opening, you just have to press apply, and then somehow all the stuff is gone. So how do you know, or how would you be sure that your CV was actually sent or the recruiter received your application?
Yeah. So you've got, unfortunately, that's part of the infuriation of the way that the job market is. And there's no way that you have control over that process. So, actually, I'm just breaking to just join my PC is back online. So I'm just going to switch off my phone and I'm going to put my headset on. Okay, just a sec. Okay, we're back. My technical people took care of it. Okay, so Michelle, sorry, I'm getting feedback on my phone here. Just a sec. Okay. Now I've forgotten what your question was.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
If you don't mind, just real quick.
Okay, my question was, usually when you apply for jobs,
Okay, the online thing.
Yes,
okay,
sure.
All right. So very hard, because you're sending your details into the cloud and then who knows where it ends up. And generally speaking, it's a bit of a frustrating affair. So I think, and I'm going to deal with this a little bit at the end, but you need to start dealing with a real person as soon as you can. So yes, apply via those online channels. That's what you've got to do. But you've also got to be aware that most jobs are actually secured by job hunters, not via formal processes like that. They are secured by referrals from friends, from colleagues, etc. So you've got to get to dealing with real people as soon as you can. Deal with people inside the company, preferably not HR. Get introduced by someone in that company. So, use a tool like LinkedIn, for example, to find out who works there. Who would be your manager? Approach them directly. The thing is, you've got to be fearless. This is your family, your livelihood that one's talking about. To type in a few things online and then to wait for the phone to ring. You know what? You kill yourself like that. It leaves you feeling helpless and hopeless. If you know a company is hiring, try to approach them directly. Try to be introduced by someone there. Try to get to know somebody there. Approach them directly, again and again and again. Make a nuisance of yourself. But you want to be dealing with people. The machines that are sorting the CVs one from the other. It's going to be infuriating. So there's no easy answer to your question, I'm afraid. You've just got to take a different job hunting strategy, and that is to be more proactive in approaching companies directly, especially the people. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good. Do we have any other questions? Olivier.
Hi, Gerard. Thank you for the workshop. My question is about for graduates who are entering the job market.
Yeah.
What should be the highlight that we should focus on? Because obviously we have less work experience, but how would you suggest to put ourselves forward and to be more proactive as you have detailed in the workshop?
Okay. Yeah, good question. And it's difficult because, there are a lot of graduates, but it's good to remember why you get hired. So you get hired on the one hand, because you've got some sort of a qualification that suggests at least that you've got certain technical body of knowledge that's useful to that company, that can be developed in the right direction. So that's one reason you get hired, together with perhaps a set of skills that you've developed. over a period of time, okay, even as a student. But then you have attributes, then you have characteristics, the person and the personality that you are. You also get hired for that. So, you know, these are the things you've got to present. Now, examples of characteristics that you've developed. In my example of earlier, of painting the house, okay, you want to look for things like that. Were there projects at university that you got involved in, that you played a lead role in? Were there initiatives that you played a lead role in? Was there anything that you started, saw it through and finished? Was there some leadership role involved? Was there something in the community? Was there something at home? What is it that you've done that shows that you've got the right character? A character that is hardworking, that has a good attitude, that wants to learn, that wants to make a contribution. You've got to look for these sort of things that suggest strongly that you're a great person to have on the team. Yes, you've got a lot to learn, but you've got your degree or your technical qualification, and you've got a great attitude. That's what employers are looking for. Obviously, there are other factors, you know, like are you a South African? There's employment equity, you know, but those are things that we can do nothing about. In this workshop, we want to be pragmatic. We want to focus on things that we can do something about. And the way we present ourselves, making sure that as a graduate, your CV is well organized, that you've got a good, sharp looking picture of yourself where, you know, you're looking together and alive. Show that you're hardworking, all your part-time jobs, all the books that you've read, all the, you know, online forums that you're a part of where you engage with other people who do what you do or want to do, you know, or are involved in your field or your discipline or your profession. Get involved, discuss the latest trends, discuss the latest methodologies and technologies, be up to date with those sort of things, include that stuff in your CV, show everybody that you're immersed in your field, in your profession. You take it seriously. In that way, you communicate a message to the employer. Yeah, here's someone who is determined, and they work part-time. They got 3 jobs, plus they read all the stuff, and they're reading this book, and they're reading that book, and they follow this guy on LinkedIn. That's what you want to carry across. A real enthusiasm for the work that you do and for your discipline and profession. And in doing that, hopefully the employer will see that you're a good investment.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, Malebongwe, welcome. Malebongwe, you might want to unmute yourself. There we go. You've just muted yourself again. There we go. Okay. What's your question?
My question, good morning, everyone.
Hello.
I would like to find out if maybe the approach should be different when you apply, when you prepare your CV for the government and the private sector. What should be the approach? What's your advice on that?
Yeah, so usually that's a much more conservative kind of environment. And so, you know, I would say that a CV like this can work for sure. But also the process is long. Usually, you know, they want something longer, not because it necessarily is any better than what you've got as a concise, short, to the point, strong CV. So you've got to kind of follow what they do. You know, it's just one of those environments that I can't really get excited about, to be honest. And there are all kinds of agendas going on, you know. This person doesn't necessarily get the job. So although that's a principle that you can apply universally as well, you know, there's sometimes employers of all types make, when you look at who they hire, it makes no sense. But there are all kinds of reasons why employers hire people. Some of those reasons are ethical, others not ethical. Sometimes They want a blonde with long legs. It's just a fact of life. And so we get rejected and we feel that we've done something wrong or that we're not good enough, but actually no. So it's one of those environments that, you know, give them what they ask for, but you've got to move on. You know, you've got to move on. You can't expect the long turnaround time. Read the advert, make sure that you match that advert with all of your experience, make it very clear in your covering letter, make sure in the CV that you cover all the points they're clearly looking for, that information is readily available for them. Make sure that you've got clear headlines, and then you've got to leave it up to the process to work, you know. So yeah, that's all I can say. I'm not sure that answers your question, Malimbongwe. The thing is about an environment like that, I don't think there's a magic fix. There's no one way to do it so that you always get a good result. It's always a bit of a lottery, I'm afraid.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Malimbongwe. And Lulama, welcome.
Good morning, and morning to all the participants. So my question is kind of two-folded. And one part of the question is on the back of Esther's question earlier. So in my experience as an employer, and this is more so from because I'm working with a lot of creatives, right? So I would have had to interview quite a few designers, as well as photographers, as well as videographers. And one of the things that I found that I look for, because I understand necessarily that when you're a designer, you generally sit behind a PC, you're not really going to be engaging with anybody necessarily. But in the interview stage, one of the things that I look for, and I don't know what your thoughts are, I'm interested to know what your thoughts are about it, is if a person can actually present a portfolio of evidence. Because the thing is, if you're a photographer or videographer, we need to actually see what you've done physically.
Sure.
And then on the point of, like I said, you're generally a person who sits behind the PC. Within the interview stage, what I've generally have done, that's where I'll be able to probe and ask, how do you deal with certain issues within the workspace? How do you deal with colleagues? How do you deal with rejection if your design hasn't been taken, etc.? So that's the one part of the question. And then the second part of the question is, personally from my side, how do you feel about the inclusion of links to radio interviews as well as TV interviews? I've done that on my LinkedIn profile page, and I have to a degree included within my CV. But again, this is just a thought from your side. Thanks.
Yeah,
that's it.
Sure. Okay, let's tackle that first. Was, you know, you get all kinds of industries that have special needs, and obviously when it comes to graphic design, you know, it's all about what the person produces and whether it matches your expectations as a company. So it might be that you're an engineer, or in IT, a project manager, and so people need to look and see the details of what project have you managed, what kind of values, what are the outcomes, and so on. So sometimes it's wise to have a separate document that deals with this sort of stuff. And a portfolio of evidence is very important for someone who's a designer and so forth. You know, so it's a bit of a different, profession. So yeah, but all of those things I think are important. Having a professional portfolio is you know, fundamental to presenting yourself for those kind of positions. In terms of including links to media, yeah, all the time. You know, I include that kind of thing all the time for, but it's got to be meaningful. You know, it's got to be, so very often, for example, if someone's got a media interview on ENCA or one of these, you know, business shows, I'll include a thumbnail picture with a link directly to the video, with a brief caption stating what it was about. So one's got to select these quite carefully. So it's not a question of including all of them. It's a question of including the best, because one has limited space. It might be the cover of a magazine or an article. The other day I did a CV for a farmer, a farmer, but not just any farmer, like a really sharp business guy who is an absolute expert in breeding sheep. And he's been in Landbou Weekblad on several occasions and Farmers Weekly in several occasions. So we included pictures of the, of the articles, not for people to read it in his CV, but rather with a link, to where it appears online. Because again, it's not for the information. It's, it's not to make you go and read the article so much. It's just to say, I'm quite important. And it's evidence that I'm good at what I do. And it adds interest to the CV and it makes it believable because it's part of a portfolio of evidence in the CV. So yeah, one can include some of that evidence in a CV, absolutely, but you don't want to get carried away. A CV is there to satisfy HR, for example, and for the line manager to kind of have lying on the desk when they interview you. It's not necessarily something that gets studied and analyzed and torn apart from a creative point of view. That, can be done in the samples of your work that you might have online. Answer your question?
Perfectly, thank you.
Great, man. Joshua, let's have your question, please.
Hi, Gerard. Good morning, and everyone.
Welcome, Joshua.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, so when dealing with recruiters, is it right to not want to disclose your current pay and just tell them, okay, this is what I'm expecting? Because I've seen, so in hindsight, when I still think I'll maintain my stand, but what I'm asking is it wrong? Because at some point I felt, okay, why do you want it? Because they tell me, okay, you can't go beyond this band. And I had my reasons at the time from previous jobs. So it was a case of being underpaid. So when they see a position I could fill, then they come up to me and say, okay, so we see you have all this experience, but then how much do you earn now? And what are you expecting? So it gets terrible when I tell them how much I earn now. Then they say, oh, we're looking for someone in the middle or top rank. And that's just because of what I was being paid. So I decided I wasn't going to tell them anymore. And I got what I wanted. So in hindsight, is it the right thing to do? I'm just asking.
Sure. It's a great question and something that you come up with a lot. And unfortunately, there are different perspectives. On the one hand, you can understand the recruiter's point of view or HR's point of view. You get a financial manager who gets paid 1.5 million rand a year. And you get a financial manager who gets paid 20,000 rand a month. Huge difference. Both the same job title, actually similar responsibilities. But because of the scale of the organization, obviously there's a big difference between the two and what they get paid and what they need in terms of experience. So it's very hard to compare apples with apples. And often a recruiter or HR department will ask your salary to try and figure out where on that spectrum do you sit in terms of your experience. Because they could be interviewing for a job that pays, 40,000 rand a month. And if you're earning 1.5 million, you know what? There's probably there's no synergy there. The company that they're recruiting for is not going to pay 1.5 million because it's a small company. And that guy is going to be, hopelessly overskilled for that small company. So it's not a match. And what helps them to determine it is money. However, it can also get messy. So you can irritate people by refusing to give them what they want. And so one has to manage that quite carefully because there are definite reasons why you shouldn't give. And some of the reasons are why you shouldn't give your salary, because then they why should they offer you more? Number one. Number two, are you comparing apples with apples? Just because you earned a certain amount in the last company, does that mean that you will work for the same in the new company? What else is that company offering? Maybe it's further that you've got to travel. Maybe it's a more complicated organization. Maybe it's much greater responsibility. Maybe as financial manager, actually you're also admin manager and you're also HR manager. So although you got paid 30,000 Rand a month before, doesn't mean you're going to settle for 32,000 in your next job. What about all these other responsibilities that they didn't tell you about? So it becomes very difficult to compare apples with apples. And so, you know, my general advice is to resist giving your salary, because you want to know, what does the job involve? And sometimes money is not the only currency. Maybe the company is 500 meters from where you live. That's worth something to you. It's worth perhaps a few hours every day, and perhaps some money. Perhaps there are other benefits to being associated with this company. Maybe it's linked with an international company that provides you with better opportunities in the long term, maybe even foreign or international opportunities. That's worth something in terms of money. So maybe you would be willing to work for less because of these other things. So there's a lot to take into the salary equation. And that's why resist giving it to them if you can. And say, look, let me discuss the opportunity. Let's sit down and let me understand more about the opportunity. That's going to have an influence on, you know, where I peg myself in terms of salary. But it's a sticky situation, and some recruiters will really give you a hard time for not wanting to divulge it. They'll make it uncomfortable and awkward for you, and you'll probably capitulate. But I would say, generally speaking, give quite a high number. If you feel forced to give a number, give a high number, but then put a smile on your face and say, but let's talk. Maybe this company has amazing opportunity for me and I'm willing to negotiate and work for less. That's perhaps an approach to take. Show that you're reasonable and negotiable. And you realize that money isn't actually the only thing that you view as currency. Hopefully that helps. Difficult question.
Yeah, it does help. Thank you, Gerard. You did answer my question. Thank you.
Excellent. Good. Anyone else? I had some questions that you should have asked. Where are they? Yeah, one of them was, what if I'm not that good? You know, we use the example of John Bikes, and everyone says he walks on water. What if you don't walk on water? What if you're just an average guy? What do you do then? Good question, right? The fact is, you've got to look for things. You know, an employer isn't going to hire you because he thinks, let me do something nice. Maybe he will, but it's not likely. He's going to hire you because you've got value. And so you've got to look at reasons why your past employers have kept you on board, even if you've been reliable. That's a good thing. Even if you get on well with people, that's a great thing. Feature those things. Not everybody gets on well with people. Some people are problems, you know, and although they might do quite a good job, it takes a lot of energy to manage them. If you're a person who gets on well with people and who fits in fast and who gets on with their job and meets the deadlines and does a good, reliable job, that's a wonderful benefit. Feature it. Might be boring, but it's actually pretty important. So so you got to look for things of why you're good to hire. Why would you be good to have on board? You're not going to save R1 million a month, but you're going to be reliable and you're going to be, trouble-free, self-sufficient. You got to think about times that you excelled, times that you did well. What were they? Maybe there's nothing. What do you do then? Good question, right? Maybe there's nothing big or nothing strong that you've done so incredibly well that, put it in lights. What do you do? Here's an idea. Figure out, when you get your next job, what is your 3-point plan for making it a huge success? From day one, what are you going to do that is going to make that job amazing, that is going to give you a reputation second to none. What are you going to do? What's your plan? Okay. So say you were an administrator, right? I'm going to, within the first 2 weeks, I'm going to have a 5-minute discussion and get to know all the people on the team. And I'm going to ask them one question. What can I do for you that's going to make your job easier, simpler, better, faster? Put that in your CV. Put your 3-point plan on how I'm going to make my next job a big success. What does an employer see? Might not see a past track record of amazing success, but here's a guy or a girl who's coming across as focused and determined, someone with a plan, someone who's laser focused on being a success. That's how you're going to come across. Include it, my 3-point plan for success in my next job. Say that. Come out and say it. Think of 3 things that you're going to do that's going to mean you're very successful. Come out and say it. Show that you've got some intent and determination. So even if you haven't been fantastic before, have a 3-point plan for being fantastic in your next job. Include that in your CV. Any other questions? Okay, one more question that I'm surprised no one has asked. What if I've had 3 jobs in the last year? Job hopper, you know, how do you get rid of that millstone around your neck? 3 jobs, 1 year. Oof, who's going to hire me? You know, join them all together. Say you were a contractor. Just come out. You know, if it was the same job, say you were a bookkeeper and you worked for 3 different companies. The first company, you couldn't get on with a person, with a financial manager. And so before you were going to get fired, you just decided to leave. The second time you were a bookkeeper, it was too far to travel. And so you left after 3 months. The 4th job, the company went out of business due to COVID-19. What do you say? Just put it all together, guys. Put it all together. Say bookkeeper / contractor. This is what I did, just as in the CV sample. And then just say, these are the 3 companies I worked for. Always, no matter what your position, always have a plan to do well in that position and show how you tackled the particular challenges there were. Show that you went in and you weren't just a bum on a seat. You were someone who was focused and intent on doing a good job. Because the fact of the matter is there are always situations that mean things don't work out. It happens with us, you know. It happens with companies, and it's things completely out of our control. And yet those things make us look bad sometimes. We can't focus on it. Let's lump it all together. Let's say we were a bookkeeper. We did 3 different contracts, and we did as good a job as was possible. Some employers are going to see that as a problem, and they're not going to hire you. Other employers are not going to care, and they're going to hire you. So you're looking for the ones that are going to hire you. That's all you can focus on. Mali Bongwe, another question.
Yeah, this question ties in with what you just said now in terms of the reasons why you left the companies.
Mm.
I mean, is it okay to just say retrenched, laid off?
I would say leave it out. No one's honest about those things anyway. You know, whenever someone says reason for leaving, I mean, what are they looking for? Sometimes recruiters will say they want you to have that in there, but you know, it's really one of those meaningless things. It's a meaningless thing. People leave jobs for any number of good reasons. It's too far for them to travel, or you know, they didn't like the culture there, or you know, it was just a difficult boss to deal with. Any number of perfectly valid reasons why you left. I think what recruiters try to look for is, was there a problem with you? You know, and to be honest, I've never ever seen a CV where someone says I was fired. You know, so no one takes that particularly seriously. But I would say that, to say you were retrenched, sure, but you might want to, I think, provide some context. Well, and what I mean by that is by saying, well, due to the following circumstances, the company had to retrench a number of people. And because I was, one of the most recent ones to join, I was one of the first ones to go. That makes it fairly innocuous, because otherwise it can come across as, essentially I was useless at my job and nobody liked me, so that to think up a reason to get rid of me. You don't want it to come across like that. You want to give a bit of context if you can. Market conditions, bad decisions within the company, cash flow problems, lost their biggest client, and so they had to cut back staff. These are the sort of things I think you want to try to list. Obviously honest, be honest about it. So those are some ideas.
All right. Thank you, Gerard.
Hi, Gerard. I'm going to jump in right now and just suggest that we go to your close off.
Okay.
It's been awesome so far.
Good. So just to close off, will you get 100% response? No. Very few people ever will. No matter what you do to your CV, there's always going to be someone who doesn't like it. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who writes it, how it's written. There's always going to be a hater somewhere. Just a fact of life. And it's like that with our job hunt. We have to persist. Let me tell you a story. I'm out in a country area, and we get people walking around the neighborhood looking for jobs, gardening and so forth. One day, this guy rocked up at our gate. He looked sketchy, man. He obviously had a knife fight, and he had a massive scar over his eye and nose down to his lip. And he gave off an aura of sketchiness, And so the first time that he came, I said, no, we've got someone who helps us in the garden, and that's it. Second time he came, same thing, turned him away without even thinking twice. He just looked too sketchy. I know it's terrible to judge people like that, but we all do it. You see what's in front of you, and you kind of make a decision. He came, I think, about 6 times. And on the 6th time, it just so turned out that our regular guy who works in the garden wasn't there that day. And there was some doubt as to whether he was able to come back. And so Joseph, the guy with the knife stab wounds on his face, ended up getting a job. And it kind of taught me a lesson. I remember writing about it in my weekly column, that persistence can overcome the most amazing obstacles. Persistence, being at the right place at the right time, plays a part. But to be at the right place at the right time requires sometimes persistence and not being scared of the word no. So just because a company from the outside, it's like they're not doing well, doesn't mean that there are no jobs there. Persist, go back repeatedly, speak to people. Don't be put off by negative comments. Have an attitude that you want to, you want to make a contribution. And you might feel like a bit of a beggar, but you know what? You're trying to support your family. Another story, there was a chap that we owned the family for some time, and he just went into serious hard times. He's a confectioner trained by a Swiss specialist in Johannesburg. Anyway, this guy rocked up at our door and had come on hard times. He'd had a business that he'd sold, and then he made 1 or 2 terrible decisions. And anyway, we put him up. The first day, the first thing he did, he puts on his shoes, gets himself dressed. He lost his car. His engine had seized up in some Karoo town. and he walked to the nearest establishment where they hire someone who's a baker and a confectioner. And there are probably 3 or 4 of those places in the area where we live. He went to every single one of them. Within 2 days, he had a job. It was just an example of a great attitude. This is the sort of attitude we need to have. And we need to be a bit more proactive. Not just answering adverts, filling out an online application, and then sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring. It's a better strategy to make a list. Make a list. What are the 20 companies within a 5-kilometer radius of where I live that could hire someone like me? Do you even have a list like that? You know, I've heard stories of, you know, someone, a bookkeeper, that travels from Fishhook to Somerset West because that's the only job she could get. And at the same time, a bookkeeper living in Somerset West travels to Fishhook every day because that's the only job that she could get. It's crazy. Look for jobs where you live, where it's more or less convenient to you. You will be surprised, you know, at what you can come up with within a convenient geographic area. If you're looking for a job, make a list of companies that you could work for. I was just contacted on Friday by a guy who's an engineer, and he specializes in air conditioning and such things. Just moved to Somerset West. First thing I said to him, so what research have you done online about what companies specialize in HVAC systems in Somerset West? Guess what his answer was? Nothing. Why not? That's your target market. Why wouldn't you know all the companies that specialize in, that hire people like you? Why wouldn't you have a list like that? Make a list of companies that hire people like you, that are convenient to people like you where you live. Make a list. Then let's connect again, me and you, about what strategy can you use to get into those companies. Because it's possible that they want to hear from you. Companies that are doing well are looking for talent. They're looking for people. They don't always put out job ads. They do often respond to people who offer themselves repeatedly because they're good. So think outside the box a little. Think about doing things a little differently, not just doing what the recruiters tell you to do. Recruiters are notoriously bad at giving you good advice regarding job hunting. Recruiters are not the only route to your next job. In fact, it's the opposite. HR are not the only gateway into a company. Anybody who works there could introduce you to the person who has the power to hire you. Use your network of contacts to find out who that person is. Send them a letter. Send them a registered letter. Send them a courier package to say, I want to work for you. This is what I have to offer. So what if they say no? No lives in the land of, sorry, I said that all wrong. Yes lives in the land of no. When you're hearing lots of no's, you're on the right track. Sooner or later, there'll be a yes in your favor. The biblical principle applies. What you sow, you reap. If you're doing nothing, if you're just doing stuff in the cloud, applications, sending it off on online platforms, you can expect to have a tough time. But if you're taking action and you're speaking to people, in that famous job hunting book, What Color is Your Parachute? It actually says it. You can judge the success of your job hunt by how many real people you're connecting with every week. That's the action that you need to be taking. Even if it's just a meeting for coffee, where you ask the question, if you were me, what would you be doing to find a new job? If you were me, who would you be looking to meet with? Who can you introduce me to? If you come across as someone professional and focused, you'll get the opportunities you want. All the best, guys. Don't forget to connect with me on my Facebook page, Kick-Ass Job Search, and we'll share some ideas. I haven't shared a lot there up to now, but there's some free stuff there. There's also, I'll be visiting to see what other help I can provide you with, and you can run ideas past me. I'll respond as much as I can. But thanks very much to Urban and to Gareth for setting this up. We appreciate it, and hopefully it's been helpful to you.
Gerard, before you go, on behalf of all the participants in the workshop this morning, thank you for your time. Thank you for your input. It's been extremely, extremely valuable. And I know that all those who took part will leave far, far better equipped themselves and far better equipped to help others. So thank you. And folk, please hook up with Gerard. He's been extremely professional in the way he's done it. I would employ you, Gerard, if I had a position in my company for you. Thank you so much. And God bless you guys. Have a wonderful weekend further. Gareth, I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, can I just echo and just say to you, Urban, and Janine, and the whole team that's been working on just how we can support people who battling unemployment or feeling underemployed or looking for a job. This has been an awesome workshop. So just echo your thanks to Gerard, but to all of you guys for putting in the effort to create this workshop today. We really do appreciate that. So may the Lord bless you, and we look forward to the next event at the Marketplace Forum. Well, we hope you enjoyed that edition. Please subscribe to our social media platforms and follow the information to get more involved in the Marketplace Forum. We'd love to see more of you.